Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for December the 13th, episode number 1375. And boy, well, note to the message board mobs, maybe you don't go nuts, start jumping off buildings, make fun of websites that put up South Carolina as hosting a massive weekend of football visitors from the transfer portal when you don't get 5 commitments by 1 p.m. on Sunday. So what is up, Craig? Always good to have Craig in the chat. Bring some dudes on in. You know, maybe this Beamer guy just knows what he's talking about when it comes to football recruiting, because the Gamecocks hosted 10 visitors. They've got more visitors on campus now. They're going to have even more visitors on campus this weekend. And to quote LeBron James, the Gamecocks, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 portal commitments and 4 portal commitments and 1 JUCO commitment in the boat, started by the Rocket Man. There was liftoff late last night. It becomes official today, 2 years to the day when Spencer Rattler went on Twitter and South Carolina broke the internet when Spencer Rattler committed to South Carolina. Now you get a guy in Raheem Rocket Sanders who was injured this year. They lost their play caller in Kendall Briles. They lost a lot of dudes to the transfer portal. They didn't have a very good team. He was banged up. But when you go back to last season, Rocket Sanders was the best running back in the country. And so I'll get to him. But let's go back, okay, because you're probably going to end up going at least 6 for 10, okay? The only player that visited that you know you're not going to get is Ivy League portal tight end Tyler Neville. He's going to Virginia. He's from Virginia. But you're bringing in a guy from Ball State named Brady Hunt that you like a lot better. I'll talk about him in a couple minutes as well. After we wrap up this and talk a little men's basketball, I'm going to bring in my good friend Emily Adams. Phil Kornblutt, due to some technical difficulties on my end and scheduling on his end, he will be with us for Thursday's show. So it got started Sunday night. Shane Beamer issued the first welcome home on Monday. We found out that was a very big need and a very big dude. That is junior college defensive tackle Jerome Simmons, 6'4", 333 pounds. Okay, I do think South Carolina wants to kind of stick with the three-man front. And you need a big nose guard. And he fits the bill for that. And so you got him, you got Nick Barrett, you've got a guy on campus right now that you feel like you've got a really good shot at getting in DeAndre Jules from Pitt, who can play nose or three technique, who's a 6'3", 320-pound grown man who is a fifth-year guy. Okay, but you get Simmons, and you get him over Georgia, okay, who's basically beating you on every defensive lineman. It's a big pickup. To me, the only negative with Jerome Simmons is he's not a mid-year graduate. He does not get to come in mid-year. You got to wait on him until the summer. All right, then on Monday, you got another welcome home. And we found out that that was Coastal Carolina wide receiver Jared Brown, who's 6 foot tall, 190 pounds. He can play the slot. He can play outside. He's really fast. And he's really, really good because he canceled visits to Louisville, who has an offensive guru and an evil genius. Back at the helm there, okay, and he turned down Hugh Freeze and Auburn to come to South Carolina. This guy has been nothing but extremely productive. In 2023, he had 58 receptions for 740 yards. 13 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, 15 carries. He's a jet sweep. He's a speed sweep guy, end around guy. 15 carries, 252 yards. That's 17 yards per carry, and a touchdown. As a freshman, he had 49 receptions for 789 yards. That's 16 yards per catch. 6 touchdowns and 20 carries for 187 yards. That's almost, it is 9.4 yards per carry. Okay, he is a guy that can play in the slot. He's also a guy that can play outside. He's a speed guy. He's a quick twitch guy. This was a very important pickup in the portal. Okay, we found that one out on yesterday. Then last night, we get 2 more welcome home from Shane Beamer. Okay, the first, North Texas running back George Attaway, 5'11", 219 pounds. My wife is not happy because the Mean Green of North Texas is her alma mater. But this has been a very productive guy. Okay, he's played in a lot of games. He's an older guy. He's probably got 2 years of eligibility because he can get a medical red shirt. Okay, George Attaway, all he's done is played in 31 games over the course of his career. He's got 344 carries for 1,935 yards and 14 touchdowns. That's 5.6 yards per carry. He's also got 21 receptions for 126 yards and a touchdown. Okay, in 2020, as a freshman, he had 99 carries for 572 yards and 3 touchdowns. He missed 2021 with an injury. In 2022, okay, and let's remember 2020 does not count, okay, because that was the COVID year. So in 2022, he had 118 carries for 583 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's 5 yards per carry. This past year, he had 123 carries for 738 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's 6 yards per carry. Okay. And so this guy is a dude. I can tell you the staff, and not Montario Hardesty, who, quite frankly, nobody here is high on at all, right? So, but the staff, the evaluators, the deciders, and a lot of people with inside the college football community, they believe George Attaway is a big-time college running back. And if you get him for 2 years, that's just going to be huge. Okay. Then late last night, J.C. Sherbert from thebigspur.com broke the news. And today, Matt Zenith from 24/7 Sports has widely reported it. Everybody's reporting it. Raheem Rocket Sanders commits to the Gamecocks. When healthy, he is the best running back in college football. There's no doubt about it. He almost chose South Carolina out of high school. There was a time Bobby Bentley thought he had him. He went to Arkansas, where Dowell Loggins was for 2 years, where Taylor Edwards was, where Justin Stepp was when he was being recruited. Okay. Obviously not pleased with the way things are going at Arkansas. He's coming to South Carolina to be closer to home. He's from Rockledge, Florida, which is right outside Daytona Beach. My uncle used to live there after he retired from the Air Force. He was a military contractor there, right outside Cape Canaveral and all of that. It's a lovely little place. And so Rocket Sanders, in 3 years and 32 games with 18 starts, he was banged up this year. He only had a little over 200 yards rushing because he just was not healthy. 398 yards. I'm sorry, 398 carries, 2,230 yards, 17 touchdowns. 49 receptions for 455 yards and 3 touchdowns. Okay. But in 2022, when he was healthy and started every game, in 2021 as a true freshman, you got to remember this guy was a wide receiver in high school. They made him a running back. He was their second team running back as a true freshman in 2021. He had 114 carries for 578 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's 5.1 yards per carry. Then last year, I mean, the dude just trucked us the whole game, the second game of the season. He had 222 carries for 1,443 yards. That's 6.5 yards per carry. Okay, he is a natural wide receiver. He's a great running back. He can pass protect. You put him in the backfield with Lenore Sellers, and guess what? That makes Lenore Sellers a much more dangerous runner, because is that end not going to come crashing down on the zone read and let Rocket Sanders explode for 30 or 40 yards? And as we all saw against Vanderbilt, Lenore's, when he pulls it, he's pretty good. So, look, you flip the running back room, you're not finished, okay? You're getting one more portal commitment. It could be announced as early as the end of today or maybe tomorrow at running back. And you're really going to like this guy. He's a younger guy. And so then this morning, you got your 5th commitment, which is Lawrence native and Vanderbilt wide receiver, Jaden McGowan, 5'9", 181 pounds. He's fast as lightning. He's a great kick returner. He's a slot receiver. I think he's an immediate upgrade to Amarian Brown. I don't think Amarian Brown was really, as tough as he needed to be. And up until this season, I don't think he was utilized the way he should have been under the former offensive coordinator. And so Jaden McGowan commits. In 2 seasons, he's got 80 receptions for 836 yards, but he's an excellent kick returner. 35 kickoff returns for 845 yards and 1 touchdown. He's a slot guy. He's a punt returner, a kick returner. He can be a gunner. Okay. And so that is the 5th and final commitment that we know about. There will be more. There are more coming. Okay. I do expect South Carolina to land Gerald Kilgore, who is the brother of Jalen Kilgore. He wanted to take a couple more visits, and so he's going to visit. And so that's 6 of the guys that was in. Tyler Neville makes 7 of the guys that were in. Okay. And so you've got the Overton brothers, LT Overton, who's a 5-star from Milton High School in Atlanta. His dad's the athletic director at Kennesaw State. His older brother, Micaiah Overton, who's a 6'3", 310-pound defensive tackle, they visited over the weekend. They are at Alabama right now, or will be this weekend. I don't think the Gamecocks are going to get them. And I'm going to tell you why. Is you got to play money ball. And I'm going to get to everybody's questions in just a minute. I just want to get through this. Okay. It's money ball. Okay. So South Carolina has a defensive end on their campus right now from Georgia Tech named Kyle Kennard. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. He's got 1 year of eligibility. You're going to have to beat Florida State for him, but we are in a lot better shape NIL-wise than last year. This past season at Georgia Tech, he had 53 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. And the Gamecocks want a big-time edge guy from the portal. Like I said, you got to beat Florida State, but they feel like they're good there. Overton, Alabama's going to make a big offer. I'm not completely ruling him out, but I don't know. And I do think South Carolina would take both of the brothers as a package. I don't think Alabama will. And so we'll see what happens there. Let me tell you who else is on campus right now. And then I'm going to take your questions, and then we'll go to commercial, and we'll bring in Emily Adams. Okay. You're currently hosting Vanderbilt quarterback A.J. Swan. Okay, you're not going to spend $700,000 or $1 million on a portal quarterback with Lenore Sellers sitting there. A.J. Swan is a 2-year starter. He started 9 games as a true freshman at Vanderbilt last year when they had a better offensive line, when they had a really good running back who transferred and went to Kentucky, Ray Davis. Okay. He was 115 for 198. That's 58%, 1,274 yards, 10 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions. This year, they kind of had the same situation on the offensive line and at running back South Carolina did, which was not good enough. Even though they had really good wide receivers, okay, not a lot of time to throw the ball. Swan played the first 5 games of the year, missed 6, and then played in the season finale. So he played in 6 games. He was 107 for 196. That's 55%. 1,457 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Still not bad. He's a guy that has been through the wars. He's got great arm talent. He's not a dual threat guy, but if you can get him, he is exactly the kind of quarterback you need, because Lenore Sellers is going to run the ball, and Lenore Sellers has some injury history. And you need a guy that you can call on with experience that can go win you a couple of football games if he gets banged up and misses a week or 2. So he's on campus. DeAndre Jules, the defensive tackle from Pitt. He's a native of Germantown, Maryland. He went to Pitt as a 6'3", 250-pound defensive end. Now he's a 320-pound, big, wide-bodied, strong, tough, physical defensive tackle. 24 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble this year at Pitt. He's a guy that can definitely come in and help you and be a factor at that nose. And when you go to a 4-man front, he could play nose or 3 technique. He's a guy, the staff, there's a level of confidence there. He visited Florida last weekend. We'll see, okay? A lot of these guys are very highly coveted that you're involved with. South Carolina State freshman running back, Jawarn Howell, 6'1", 215 from Mooresville, North Carolina. He's on campus. He's got 4 to play 3. And this past season, last year, Buddy Pugh's final season at South Carolina State, 102 carries, 809 yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 receptions for 149 yards. That's almost 15 yards per reception, and 2 more touchdowns. And this is a big-time back. This is a guy that slipped through the cracks, and he's got a lot of offers. But the kids and his family grew up Gamecocks. And South Carolina's his dream school. I found that out this morning. And so I think things are trending in the right direction for Jawarn Howell. And then you got Kyle Kennard coming on campus. Okay, this weekend you're going to host more wide receivers. Okay, Cyrus Allen, who was supposed to be in last weekend from Louisiana Tech, he's coming in. He's got 68 receptions for 1,278 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2 years at Louisiana Tech. He is a dude. He is a number 1 wide receiver. And you've got the tight end that you want coming in Brady Hunt, who is from Muncie, Indiana. He's at Ball State. He'll come in with 3 to play 3. He was a high school quarterback, 6'6", 215. He came in 2021 and redshirted. They moved him to tight end. He gained 30 pounds. And in 2022, as a redshirt freshman, he caught 46 passes for almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. this past season, he was having a great preseason. He banged up his ankle, never could get healthy, hurt it again. They performed surgery. He missed the season, and he's coming in this weekend, and South Carolina really, 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 really likes him a lot. And so I'll have more in the coming days on more portal guys, and we'll be looking out for more commitments. All right, let's go to the Nana's Porch chat box, which is jumping today. Great to have Craig and Matt and the Carolina Titan in here, and WJM41. Everybody's in here. So let's get to your questions. So Matt wants to know if we can somehow convince Juice to come back. That would really be huge to go with Brown and McGowan. Well, Matt, no doubt about it. Hashtag. I don't know what the odds on that are, but I think if you're South Carolina, you're going to keep recruiting Juice Wells, but you're going to keep mining the portal. And if you can get Cyrus Allen, and if you can get another portal wide receiver, I was tipped off earlier that South Carolina may be hosting Tulane transfer wide receiver Chris Brazel II. He's 6'4", 6'5", about 195. He's I think a redshirt freshman this year at Tulane. He had 44 receptions for 711 yards. That's 16.2 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns. And things are trending for you with former Texas A&M commit and Milton, Georgia wide receiver DeBron Gatling. Hello, Texas A&M. LT Overton, also from Milton High School, Texas A&M transfer. Maybe that helps you, but this guy's a stud wide receiver. He had 44 offers. He committed to A&M in the spring of 2022, and he could have gone to Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Florida State, Miami. I mean, you name it, he could have gone there. So hope for the best, expect the worst, hope for the best, keep recruiting Juice, but bear down and keep bringing in talent at wide receiver. Craig believes Overton will be a tough pull. I agree. I think he will be a tough pull, but I'm not ruling it out. But I will say this. I think if they can get Kennard, that NIL slot will be gone. And quite frankly, you're going to be in good shape on the edge next year. And now that you're also playing a 3-3-5 a lot, you don't need as many edge rushers if you're just in a 4-man front. So Matt says, I'm tired of seeing the Hardesty love now because of getting 2 running backs. Well, let me tell you, Hardesty didn't really have a damn thing to do with either one of them, quite frankly. It's Dowell Loggins, it's Taylor Edwards, it's Shane Beamer, okay? Those are the guys that are leading the charge. He's a placeholder. He's not a good recruiter, okay? He's just not. And Matt was in overtime last night, and Matt heard a story about one reason why he's not an elite recruiter. So Kathy Ireland was not, I don't know who, Craig, you think she was blocking for, but probably not. Well, probably, yeah, this year for Rocket. She probably was, yeah. Can Rocket bring Jimmy Smith with him? Ask him for a friend, Craig says. Well, as Jesse Jackson would say, keep hope alive. We can always hope, right? I'm hoping. So WJM41 says it's amazing watching Sunday and Monday night football where a lot of these guys went to college. The majority come from non-blue chip schools. That's true. That's why recruiting is an inexact science, and you can't always project guys accurately. Like several years ago, there was a tight end that went to Iowa, and he was like 6'5", 210 pounds, and he wound up being a 6'7", 300-pound left tackle who was like the number one offensive lineman in the country. Who would have known? 5 years ago, the guy was a 6'5", 210-pound tight end. I mean, stuff happens. Guys develop. Look, Nick Gargiulo, he's probably going to play in the NFL. You know, he was really good for us. He would have been better if he could have stayed at guard and wouldn't have been banged up all year. Craig wants to know, are we out on Shepard? Shepard has got a lot of big offers, and I'm hopeful. But, you know, I got to say, Justin Stepp has just really not impressed me on the recruiting trail. And I think there are a lot of people in the building that are not impressed with his recruiting prowess on the recruiting trail. That's all I'm going to say. So AB was great at Georgia Tech as a freshman. The sophomore year, not so much. We didn't use him correctly, but I can tell you, AB not as tough as he probably needed to be. And he did drop a lot of critical third and fourth down plays. I mean, I do agree A.J. Swan is the best arm talent at quarterback since Jay Cutler. I do agree with that. The Indiana wide receiver, possible, but as of late last night, I heard things were trending away from Donovan McCulley visiting South Carolina because Michigan just offered him, and I think Ohio State might have offered him. But I do know Michigan offered him. He's an Indianapolis kid. And Overton, who is he comparable to? Man, I don't know. Maybe. So here's the problem with Overton. He was class of 23, and then he reclassified and came out as class of 22. Normally, defensive linemen should not do that. Basketball players can do it. Football players really shouldn't do it. So he was 6'5", about 245 pounds. Now he's 280. And so I don't really know who to compare him to. Maybe Tyrion Ingram Dawkins would be a good comparison. But I think he's a perfect fit to be a defensive end in your 3-3-5 because you do need 6'5", 280 or 85, 90-pound guys that can get their hands up, that have natural pass rush ability, and that can also move. So that'd probably be who I would compare Overton to. WMJ41 says it'd be crazy if Juice came back. A lot of folks would have to take back a lot of nasty comments, myself included. Well, I did kind of tweet an emoji of Denzel Washington slamming the door saying bye. But at the same time, there are some legitimate reasons why Juice has some beef at South Carolina. And it stems from after his injury and the training staff and things of that nature. So we'll see. Juice has probably the best NIL deal on the table at South Carolina that he's going to get. Texas is getting Texas guys from other schools out of the portal. He won't be the number one receiver there. Ole Miss maybe is not as great as Lane Kiffin made it out to be. We'll see. You know, again, I'm just going to wish the young man well wherever he goes. I appreciate what he did. He was a big part of two of the biggest wins in school history and certainly the biggest wins of Shane Beamer's career. And so we'll see. So Matt says, am I wrong to not be as concerned on the offensive line as others are? Getting Nichols and Henry back with Marquis Anderson, adding Josiah Thompson, Cam Pringle to that group with a healthy Nick Gargiulo and Trey Jones. I agree. You also still have, hopefully, a healthy Ja'Kai Moore, Vershawn Lee, okay, and Big Tree, and Trevon Ball, and don't forget about my man Jatavius Shivers, who may have as good of an upside as any lineman in that class. And if you do get Casey Henry back and he's healthy, and he can stay healthy and practice and develop, and Jalen Nichols comes back healthy, I do think you have a lot of great options. My man Craig popped in, or Clint Morrison, my dude. Where you been, Clint? Man, we've been missing you on the town halls. Everything is good today, brother. The message board mob got it wrong, okay? And I got to say this, Coach Beamer, if you're listening, I love you. You're my head coach. But don't acknowledge the message board mob in your welcome home tweets. Don't be that petty. Don't be that thin-skinned. Just let them do whatever it is that they do. And you keep doing what you do and win a bunch of football games. And all of that will go away. So Clint Rocket is good. George Attaway is good. Jared Brown is good. Okay. Jerome Simmons is good. Jared Brown is good. I think some others are getting ready to be really good for us. Gerald Kilgore is going to be good. If we get A.J. Swan, he's going to be good. DeAndre Jules will be good. If somehow, if you can pull Jawan Howell from South Carolina State, he's going to be really good. And you're going to get more guys visiting this weekend. So, and Juice Wells might come back. So everything's good. All right, we got a women's basketball question here. And that's from WJM41, does the way Peely from Utah played on Sunday concern you, or was that a one-off? No, it really doesn't concern me because she's the most unique player in the country. She had a career game, and here's what a lot of people don't understand. Utah, coming into that game, was averaging 97 points per game. They were shooting 58% from the field, and they were shooting 46% from three, or maybe 45%. I can't remember. I'll have to get my stats when we bring Emily in. But they were averaging 14 made threes per game. And so the strategy was, we're going to guard Peely one-on-one. Well, the refs called two horrible flops on Camila Cardoso. Ashlyn Watkins got in early foul trouble. She committed a silly foul on a turnover, and then she fouled Peely one time. And that took the two players off the floor that could guard her. Plus, South Carolina was not going to help off other players and let them shoot open threes. because they averaged 14 made threes per game. That's like an NBA team, 14 made threes per game. South Carolina said, we're going to force them to take tough contested threes. We're going to run them off the three-point line, and it worked. You had 23 turnovers. 9 of those were the result of offensive foul calls, and at least half of them were bogus. And Peely had a great game, but guess what? Nobody else did. Utah was 5 for 20 from 3, and in the fourth quarter, they shot 33% from the field, and I don't think they made a single 3 in the final 10 minutes. So we'll get into that with Emily in just a couple minutes. Carolina Titan wants to know, is Kilgore's brother pretty legit? I saw his highlights and would think we'd be in the driver's seat for his services. Titan, I think he probably commits by the end of the weekend. He enrolls in January, and I think he's a guy that could be a nickel, a corner. He was a high school quarterback. Hell, he could even play wide receiver. I know Jalen's wide receiver highlights were ridiculous. I think you got to move Vicari Swain to wide receiver, personally. Craig says, I like Cardoso, but she could be even more dominant if she played with more speed on defense. Sometimes it looks like she's just going through the motions, not closing out. I mean, it is tougher to close out when you're 6'7" and your legs are as long as hers. I think if Camila Cardoso played with the disposition of Ashlyn Watkins, she would be the National Player of the Year this year. That's a fact. So Matt says, hey, we already have a high school quarterback at safety. Why not grab another? Well, I could see it. I think you'd like for him to be a better cover guy than DQ Smith for sure. DQ Smith's really a safety. I think we need a nickel corner. Maybe Gerald can do that. He's really athletic. And so we'll see. All right, Marquise says, is Juice coming back? Well, that is the $400,000 question, isn't it? Say, let me tell you about my good friends at BP Skinner Clothier. Okay, I've got on a beautiful black Holderness and Bourne pullover I picked up when I was in town for the Kentucky game. Wore it on the sidelines, wore all black. Okay, just like Joe Morrison, black shoes, black socks, black pants, black pullover, black t-shirt, all black. BP Skinner, they've got a phenomenal line of Holderness and Bourne pullovers and polos. They've got the Imperial cap line for the Gamecocks. The gray ones are the same ones Spencer Rattler wore, are beautiful. But look, everybody's not a cookie cutter, okay? Clothes off the rack are cookie cutter. Sometimes it's hard to find pants long enough for me, okay? Sometimes it's hard to find shirts, dress shirts, that the arms are long enough for me. Now, because I've lost 20 pounds and I'm 190 pounds instead of 210 pounds, my blazers need to be taken up at the waist. You know, you want that sleek V shape, Okay, some guys are built stocky and it's tough to find stuff to fit. But at BP Skinner, they're all about building a reputation on the perfect fit of trust, quality service, and style. Brent Skinner and his wife Marlo, they started this business in 2012. It is a Gamecock owned and operated family business. Josh Colvin, a great guy, one of the best in the business. He's on the floor at the store. Brent and Josh do a great job. Brent is a South Carolina graduate. He's been serving clients for over 17 years, and he's built a business that's really second to none. I mean, Brent's a friend of mine. He flies all over the country to see clients, okay? He's got a lot of high-end clientele. And so whether it is a suit, maybe you're getting married, maybe you got a funeral, maybe you got a big deal you want to go to, okay? And you go to the store and you just can't find something that when you try it on, you look in the mirror, it just doesn't look right, okay? Go to BP Skinner Clothiers, now located in the heart of the Vista, 1003 Gervais Street, okay? And they will fix you up with a custom design wardrobe, dress shirts, slacks, sport coats, suits, socks, shoes, neckties, bow ties, quarter zips, okay, vests, jackets, whatever you need. BP Skinner and Clothier, they got you covered. Brent believes in providing his clients with the best quality clothing at a fair price. His attention to detail, his commitment to ensuring his customers look and feel their absolute best is what sets him apart as one of the best clothiers in the industry. Let him put his reliable experience in custom menswear to work for you. Go by BP Skinner Clothiers, located at 1003. You can park right on the side of the road or in the parking lot, right in the Vista. Walk in. I mean, man, they got some beautiful shoes in there, belts, sport coats, but he can definitely fit you up, and Josh can as well. And plus, Brent's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet and loves the Gamecocks. So I highly encourage all of you to support this Gamecock-owned and operated business. All right, we'll be back with Emily Adams right after this.
If you enjoy listening and watching the Free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Yuva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter @KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter @GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, so a couple of notes before we bring in Emily Adams. So the schedule for me the rest of the year, tomorrow we'll have Phil Kornblutt on Friday. We'll have our Free-for-All Friday show. We'll preview the basketball weekend, the football recruiting weekend, and more. Okay, then next week will be National Signing Day on Wednesday. That will be the final Gamecock Pod Live of 2023. The following day, on Thursday the 21st, will be the final podcast of the year, barring something crazy happening. I'm going on vacation for Christmas and will return on January 2nd. But if we need to have an emergency pod, we can certainly do that. So it's great to have everybody in next week, trying to line up multiple guests to talk about the Gamecock recruiting class. And then I'll have another podcast after the Gamecock Pod Live with Shane Beamer's signing day press conference. So it'll be a big day. And then we're also having our final Garnet and Black Town Hall of the year next Wednesday night after National Signing Day, because I think it's going to be a great day to be a Gamecock, kind of like today. All right, so give me just a few seconds and we'll bring in Emily Adams.
Yeah, no.
All right, bear with me. I'm going to run our commercial one more time. I'm going to try to figure out what I need to do here. We did our recording a different way, and I got to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. So I do apologize. Hang on.
If you enjoy listening and watching the Free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Yuva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter @KAllset or follow the show on Twitter @GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, so I had downloaded the wrong file. Emily, we had to record earlier this morning, and me being, my Lower Pickens County education came into play there, and so I'm downloading the correct file now, and so you can watch, and I'll be monitoring the chat, and I will respond to all your questions in the chat. We're going to talk Gamecock women's basketball. Phil Kornblutt tomorrow will talk Gamecock men's basketball in addition to football recruiting, Gamecocks filling needs. Who knows? There may be a couple more welcome homes by then. But I can tell you this, South Carolina certainly is off to a great start. We did get a question about DeBron Gatling. I do believe he is someone that is trending to the Gamecocks and will probably announce next week. And he has decommitted from Texas A&M. South Carolina had him in for the Kentucky game on an official visit. They've been working Torian Gray and Justin Stepp and Shane Beamer to get him in. And he is a highly, highly recruited player. He's got great film. He's from a big-time program. And I'm pretty sure he's a mid-year graduate. And so if you add him to Mazeo Bennett, okay, and you get, let's say, at least one more portal receiver, and Juice comes back, along with the young players, you've got a really talented receiver room. If Juice doesn't come back and maybe you add two more wide receivers, because look, here's the truth and the facts, folks, is there's a lot of high-profile players that are not in the portal yet because they want to play in the bowl game. They want to take that trip. They want to get the bowl swag. Or they're in the college football playoff. And so the portal is open until like the end of the first week in January, okay? And so there are guys that are going to be available. WJM41, all I can tell you is there are going to be no coaching changes until after the holidays. I would look for late December, early January. That's when their contracts run out. I do expect there to be 3 or 4 staff changes, but we'll just have to wait and see. All right, so we're going to try one more time with Emily Adams. I'll be in the chat. Hang on. This time we should be good. We talk about the Gamecocks win over Utah. We talk about some of the younger players, the areas where they're different, where they're deeper. We talk about the ranked wins. And we kind of debate who's better out of South Carolina and UCLA, and, you know, just how good this team can be. So hang on for And we welcome back into Gamecock Pod Live our good friend and my second favorite Eagles fan, although I don't know that we're going to talk about them today.
Yeah, no.
Emily Adams from the Greenville News, who does a fantastic job covering all things Gamecocks for a newspaper, even though I still don't know how many of those things they print, but a newspaper they'll always be near and dear to my heart because that's the one I grew up reading, even though by the time I got to read it, my dad had folded it and made it a mess. He was not the neatest newspaper reader.
Pull the sports
And
page
it
out.
kind of ticked off my mom at times. So, hey, how are you doing? Have you got all your Christmas shopping done? That's what everybody really wants to know today.
Just about. We're making our way through the list slowly but surely. I've got my last couple of things to check off, but we're making progress, and that's the big thing right now.
Yeah, so we're going to be like the Griswolds. We're loading up the family truckster and going to Louisville.
Oh, I love it. That's a long drive.
Yeah, my daughter's godmother, she's kind of a big deal. And she's got this large, beautiful, well, I don't know if I can call it a mansion or not, but I know it's 3 levels, and we wanted to do that this year so Addison could spend more time with her godmother, who is an awesome human being and my favorite of all my wife's friends. That's where we're going for Christmas. And so it should be a lot of fun, and hopefully they won't be in the family truckster. They'll be in something a lot nicer and, not as, well, I don't know about the family truckster, but hopefully we won't get lost going through St. Louis. I don't plan to get there. And hopefully the hubcaps don't come off and nobody spray paints what they did on the family truckster in the original Vacation movie on the side of my truck. All right, so let's get down to it. On Sunday, South Carolina went on the road to Connecticut, basically a home game for UConn, even though they weren't playing UConn. UConn played in the game following South Carolina. And I did notice there were a lot of North Carolina fans who were behind the South Carolina bench. And obviously there's probably thousands of UConn fans. We didn't talk about this. Were you at the game? Did you make the trip, or
I was not, unfortunately. Yeah, the travel budget was fully blown making the trip overseas. So I did not.
Maybe by February, the coffers will be replenished for the trip to Baton Rouge.
That is
Louisiana. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Those tickets are already going for $1,300 to $3,000 a piece on the secondary market for South Carolina and LSU. Yeah,
that's crazy. Good for them.
Isn't that neat that a women's basketball game, as poorly as the sport is officiated, and so can we start with that? Because
yeah, it's been
I know
bad.
you're not in the arena, but so South Carolina was credited with 23 turnovers because 9 of those were offensive fouls. And quite frankly, I thought a couple of Utah players could probably win some daytime Emmys for their acting performance on the flops that were called. Is it always a charge? When do you ever see a block called in a women's basketball game?
Yeah, and I mean, it's, I've been calling it the 6-7 penalty, because that's really what it is at this point. It's not that, you saw this with Aaliyah Boston. You saw it affect Utah too, frankly, with Peely picked up a couple of fouls that were questionable. And, I just, it really like took a lot of the energy out of that game because it was such a good game. It was such a competitive matchup. Like Peely was so electric to watch, and she's off the court for, most of a quarter because, she's getting ticky-tack fouls. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not like, I'm obviously used to watching SEC basketball. I like physicality in my basketball. I like them sort of letting it go a little bit, but we have to, there has to be some happy medium here between sort of the complete lack of control that there was at like North Carolina and what the way it was being called at Utah. Cause it's just like, we have to have a balance somewhere in here because neither of those options are sustainable.
I agree. And I think given the level and the just the level of games, okay, the fact that at least in one poll, Utah was a top 10 team. They're ranked 11th in both polls now. They didn't really drop. North Carolina, South Carolina in the SEC, ACC Challenge, a nationally televised game with Decanter, who is supposed to be the top women's basketball official in the sport, who, quite frankly, if she never officiates another South Carolina women's basketball game, I think Dawn Staley and pretty much all the fams, and I know I'm good with it, and the more I look back on it, I really wish Dawn would have just gotten her money's worth and told Decanter exactly what was on her mind when they didn't even call a foul or a technical on the North Carolina player that shoved Ashlyn Watkins to the ground and then got up and talked trash in her face. There was no penalty for that. And then we go to Sunday, and the flops. That is in the NBA, even I think in men's college basketball, if you flop, it's a penalty. It's a penalty in the NBA for flopping. And you can go to the replay to check it out. And I think it's time to institute a coach's challenge because I love what they've done with going to quarters in women's game. I love what they've done, allowing them the timeouts to advance the ball, just like in the NBA and the WNBA. But to me, you should have a challenge, and you can challenge in college football. You should be able to challenge in college basketball. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. I think, especially with just, the amount of instant replay and that sort of thing that we have access to now, I think it's silly not to have it. It's one of those things where, you get not wanting to slow down the game. And I think it would take some sort of, working on to figure out actual like policy and rule, language. But they just can't keep going like this. And it's not just, it's affecting everybody. Like, you saw it affected Utah, obviously pretty significantly in that game, as much as it did South Carolina. They're down, 2-3 of their top players periodically, because I think they had 3 end up with 4 fouls. It just, even when you look at that UNC game, like that game devolved the way that it did with the sort of chippiness, and the Duke game as well, because, it wasn't controlled early on. So it's, you know, it's hurting everybody, and you're seeing it around the league too. It's not just an SEC problem. It's not just an ACC problem. Like it's, I mean, you're seeing complaints about refs in pretty much every major game there's been so far. And that's when I think the red flags have to start to go up.
I agree. Okay, so let's talk about the Utah game. South Carolina got off to a fast start in that game, 27-16. And so first, I want to get your thoughts on the strategy, the defensive strategy of Dawn Staley, who she said coming in the game, and for everybody that's listening, if you don't realize, Utah coming into this game was averaging 96 points per game. They're shooting 55% from the field. They're shooting 44% from three, and they were averaging, making 14, that's right, not 14 threes per game. 14. That's a lot of threes.
And a lot of those are coming from
just to average that.
Which is even crazier.
Right. Who, there's nobody like her in women's college basketball.
Yeah. I love to watch her. I mean, she's so unique. Yeah, it's Swing Cash made a comp for her on Twitter that I can't remember to an old school W player who that I thought was really good, and I can't remember who it was now. But yeah, I mean, she's just such a rare combination of skills of like she's super physical and super like, I mean, you know, Dawn I think talked about afterwards. You cannot let her get to your body. Like you have to, because if she gets to your body, it's over. She's scoring. Like, I mean, she's just so tough. She's technical. She can shoot from, I mean, truly anywhere. Like it's, I mean, she just has a skill set that you don't see among players of her size. Like it's a versatility that is just so like invaluable and so difficult to defend as we saw on Sunday.
I agree. So the strategy, for those not aware, was we're just going to let Peely score. We're going to play one-on-one, and we're not going to overhelp or help off of her, except late in the fourth quarter when she is on the baseline, we'll double on her. But they played single coverage. Camila Cardoso only played 7 minutes. She was on the bench. Ashlyn Watkins, I thought, was the best matchup with Peely because I thought she could guard her out beyond the three. She could guard her off the dribble and in the post, but she picked up a silly foul. Her first foul was after a turnover, and she committed a foul in the backcourt, and then she picked up one foul guarding Peely. And to me, the game would have almost been over at halftime if she doesn't commit that silly foul and they only called one flop on Cardoso. And maybe you get 12 minutes or 13 minutes out of Cardoso and 8 minutes to 12 minutes from Ashlyn Watkins. But that didn't happen. But the strategy was we're not going to help because we're going to force Utah to take tough threes, contested threes, and we're going to run them off the line. And at the end of the day, Emily, when you look at the stats, they were 5 for 20 from three, which was a season low, and they had the two lowest scoring quarters of their season against South Carolina in the first quarter and the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
16 and 12.
And I mean, I think that's what's been so impressive with the South Carolina team is like they're holding this Utah team that's I think number 2 in the country in 3-point shooting to, you know, season lows all over the place. and they didn't even play particularly well. Nobody is coming out of that game going, South Carolina really wow, they dominated that game. Everyone's coming out of that going, oh my God, look what Alyssa Peely did against South Carolina, of everybody. So, I mean, I think it's just such a testament to how many different ways they can win that, I mean, even playing poorly, they're still, recording the kind of numbers that nobody else is doing on both ends of the, offensively, defensively. It's always something. They're gonna get you one way or another. It's just a question of which one it is.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the strategy by Dawn Staley was brilliant. And also Gianna Neepkins, Utah's second best player, unfortunately, in their previous game against BYU, she broke several bones in her foot, probably metatarsal bones, I'm guessing. And she's out for the season. She was a 6-foot guard that was averaging over 18 points per game. She was shooting 63% from the field and 58%, just something insane from three. I mean, that's a big piece to miss.
Yeah.
But let's go to South Carolina for a second, because I thought Raven Johnson played her worst game of the year. And I think it was all set up when she made a beautiful steal. She had an uncontested layup, and she had way too much mustard on her right hand. And she thought she was just going to flip it, and the ball slipped off her hand, and she missed it. It wasn't even close. And coming off a suspension in the previous game against Morgan State for violation of team rules, I thought mentally after that, she was not the same player we've seen in the previous 8 games. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know whether it was the suspension, if it's just, it's finals and it's almost the holidays, but I think that's also, the ups and downs are a little bit just sort of what you get with a player like Raven. Inconsistency is just sort of part of someone who plays at that super high speed all the time, doesn't have a slower setting. And so sometimes you're not hot, and when you are not the kind of player that can settle into a game, it's hard to get out of that slump, I think, once you're in it. You saw it with Zaya Cook at times last year. You saw it frankly with Raven at times last year, which is why that rotation with Kara Fletcher worked so well, because one of them was going to be hot. It just was a question of who on what day. And so I think, you saw obviously Tahina Pau kind of took over, late in that game, was sort of the fuel for them in the fourth quarter. Having that other option still to sort of balance Raven, to not have it be devastating when Raven's having a bad game. I think it's just really smart team building. It's a really good understanding of, what you have on your roster and how to manage it. I think I'm not worried about her in a long-term way, but I do think that is sort of just part of the deal with a player that plays the way she does.
I mean, she clearly had her worst game of the year. She still, though, for the season, is shooting 53% from the field, 44% from three. I think because they play so fast and she passes the ball so much, she does not get to the free throw line a lot. I think that has got to change in conference play to some degree. But I thought that was clearly maybe the worst she's ever played, not just even this season, because I don't think I've ever seen her throw the ball to the opponent 3 times in one game. I don't think I've seen her throw the ball to the opponent 3 times cumulatively until the Utah game. It just seems she was out of sync. But Tahina Powell, man, she stepped up. She hit some big shots. She drew a big foul. She, guarded. Is she the glue right now for this team? Because I think she really adds a calming veteran presence that really this team doesn't have, because she has started probably close to 100 games in her career and played way more minutes than anybody else on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's just so consistent. Like, you constantly know what you're going to get with her, and it's going to be good. It's even when she's not shooting well, she's still valuable. Like, she's had games with 2 assists and games with 8 assists. Like, she's been, the big concern with her, I think, coming in was just whether she was going to be a defensive liability. And she hasn't been really at all. There's certainly like learning curve things, and little, things that you wish were better, but also, in the grand scheme of things, she's made that adjustment, from the Pac-12, from not being on a defensive focused team extremely well in a very short amount of time. Yeah, I mean, I've just been super, super impressed with her. I think, she's just stepped in and been like a truly a perfect fit. And part of that, I think, is a testament to Dawn and to the way that Dawn has sort of, retooled the offense this year to suit the personnel that she has, and the way that she's sort of given her that freedom to take leadership as a first-year player on the team. So, it's really been, I think, a perfect storm for her of just, everything has kind of worked out the way that you hoped it would when she committed.
No doubt. I mean, looking at her stats, she's shooting almost 51% from the field.
And fully 51% from 3, I believe.
That's right. She's actually shooting better from 3. She did finally hit a runner, like the little floater. Her floater game, she's been a little off on those, but she hit a couple against Utah, which was good, because, I mean, it's kind of frustrating when you watch somebody stand behind the 3-point line and just not even hit the rim with the shots, right? And then they get a 12-footer and clank. And so she is 22 for 43 from downtown. As a team this year, this is the biggest difference statistically for any Dawn Staley team. In 9 games, this team has already attempted 156 threes. They barely attempted like 230 or 40 all of last year. Okay, they're on record to probably attempt maybe, I don't know, close to 400 threes with the rest of their schedule that they're going to play. They're 62 for 156. That's 40% on the season. And you've got Cardoso shooting 62% from the field. Powell, we mentioned. Malaysia Full Wiley, add it to the reel, as my man Ryan Rucco said after she made the baseline drive. At least he was excited to see her play. Not so much his broadcasting partner, but we won't talk about her. Chloe Kitts is shooting over 49%. Raven Johnson, 53% and 44% from 3. Ashlyn Watkins, no surprise, 61%. Breezy Hall, after a slow start, is now shooting 38% from 3, and she is second only to Tahina Powell in 3-point attempts. I think that percentage will continue to climb. Sanaya Fagan shoots 54% from the field. And I'm calling it my favorite freshie, Tessa Johnson. More steady than A few good men on a rainy Sunday afternoon, to quote my guy, John Rothstein. 55% from the field and almost 45% from three. I mean, it seems like maybe she's a duck. Like what you see above the water is just completely calm, and maybe what's below the water is just going 100 miles an hour. But can we talk about just how smooth, how calm, and the pace with which she plays? It's just never seems too big for the moment with her on either end of the floor. And I think with her and where she's going with her development and Malaysia full Wiley, this freshman backcourt, I don't know that anybody's got a pair of freshmen that complement each other's styles. And over the course of their careers, if they stay for 4 years, they're going to make a lot of buckets, and South Carolina's going to win a lot of games with them.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Tessa, I mean, it's every piece is there for her, except I think just like the confidence and that sort of assuredness in herself and in her own decision making. Like she doesn't really make mistakes. You see moments where she hesitates, where she'll make a pass when she should have shot, and I mean, just little things like that. But it's like that one thing would click everything together for her so beautifully, I think. And it's something that's going to come with time. Obviously we've seen Chloe Kitts go from, the way that she looked last year to the way that she looks this year, largely just because she's comfortable now. And so I think that's a thing, as SEC play progresses, I think we'll just continue to see her more and more. It's especially with the way the SEC looks, they're not necessarily going to be in a whole lot of close games based on the current situation down the standings there. So yeah, I'm expecting to see a lot of her come the new year.
I agree. I think South Carolina, I do think this team has more quality depth. They have more shot makers. They have more big bodies that are really talented, that can play. And to me, that's why they are the number one team in the country. And so, and the youth, like, I don't know if people really realize around the country, when you look at the youth, and combine that with the talent, just how much better this team could get as the season goes on. Like, to me, they've not played anywhere close to their best right now.
Yeah.
And so they are the number one team in the country, I think, by virtue of their early season ranked wins. Clearly that was not their best game, but when you can go environment, even though it was a neutral floor, and beat a top 10 team, when you don't play your A game, that's another testament to why you're really good. Yeah. So you voted South Carolina number one. You said because based on all of that, and we talked a little bit about this before we went on, it's really South Carolina and UCLA. And then it's everybody else right now. South Carolina has 5 players in double figures and 2 more players averaging 9 points per game, primarily because Dawn Staley, they don't have to play a lot of minutes because they're even, except for the Utah game, they've killed every ranked team they played just about. UCLA, which has the big transfer portal addition of Lauren Betts, who is the only other 6'7" player in the country that can challenge Camila Cardoso. I mean, they, return Charisma Osborne, Kiki Rice, Gabriela Jaquez, I'm not as familiar with her. She's actually their second leading scorer. They've got 6 players in double figures, so they're pretty deep. And Emily Bessoir has only played in 1 game this season.
Yeah.
And she was a starter for them. I don't know. I haven't really kept up with them. I did watch them almost lose to Princeton. And so I think, so in your story, you said if South Carolina and UCLA played today on a neutral court, UCLA would win. I think that's possible. I think UCLA could win. I do think South Carolina would be still a line favorite. I also think if both teams played their A games, South Carolina would win. But I do think, just like last year, we saw it with Iowa.
Yeah.
Certainly UCLA could win. But I think because of Betts, who I don't think is athletic or as quick, I think she's more of a plotter, but she is big and she is talented. I think it would be a great game. Obviously, these two teams played twice last year. South Carolina won by 9 at home. They actually trailed, I think, going into the fourth quarter of that game. And then they faced off in Greenville in the NCAA tournament, and it was a rock.
Did not go quite as well for UCLA.
Yeah, that was like a rock fight.
Yeah,
59-43. I think I would definitely take the over. Probably on the point totals. UCLA, they're averaging, just like South Carolina, right at 93 points per game. They've got a couple of interesting games coming up. I mean, really the only time they've been challenged was that Princeton game. They do have an 11-point win over UConn. They do have a win over a ranked opponent in FSU, but I mean, there's a huge difference in the women's game between like number 18 or 22 versus in the men's game. There are more great teams and more really good teams. So power still rests in the top 5 or 5 to 8 teams this year because Stanford is rated number 8. And I do think, they have a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Cameron Brink fan, so I've been in on Stanford from the early days of the season. I fully believe in her ability to carry them, and it is looking like that's what's going to have to happen this year because they have not looked nearly as good when she is not on the court. But I mean, UCLA, I've just been really consistently impressed with. I had that weird then. I also think is very good. So I don't necessarily knock them a whole lot for that. And yeah, I mean, to beat Florida State the way they did, obviously Florida State's not in that upper echelon, but it is, I mean, undoubtedly a good team, like one of the top teams in the ACC. And so, I think that's a really big win for them. I mean, even Arkansas, a decent win. Arkansas has kind of been up and down this year as they kind of always seem to be. I don't know what is ever going on with them, but that's not a bad win. Obviously UConn, not a bad win. And if they're playing tomorrow and I'm putting money down, my money is on UCLA. A lot of it is because of that matchup with Betts and Cardoso. I mean, Betts is shooting, I think, almost 78% from the field, like close to 80. Like it's, I mean, truly some like crazy numbers that she's putting up. And I mean, just the way that she's developed so quickly under Corey Close, I've just been really impressed with how she's looked. It makes you go, okay, how was she not playing more at Stanford last year? Because, you imagine that duo of her and Cameron Brink this year, on top of what Stanford's already got with Kiki. Oh my gosh, what's her last name? It's escaping me. But the other big that they the one at Stanford who's the big that they've been playing with Brink. I don't know why I can't remember her name.
All right, I'll get it. Hang on.
Erie Affin.
I do like her. Yes, Erie. I'm glad you can pronounce it. Erie Affin. I knew it started with an I. She's really good. But I also think she's quicker and more athletic. And
yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's like, okay, for me, I remember when the Celtics and Lakers played and the Lakers had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he mostly saved his energy for offense. And the Chief, Robert Parrish, who was not the best player on the Celtics team, he would just beat him down the floor for layups. And if South Carolina and UCLA played, Camila Cardoso's winning that sprint on Lauren Betts every time.
Well, that is
every
certainly
time.
True.
And I just think South Carolina is capable. I mean, no team is infallible, right? And so I think they're in a tier all by themselves. In the next tier for me, I have Texas, Stanford, and UCLA. That's probably, in my opinion, the top 5 teams in the country. No offense to NC State. They do have a good win over UConn, their first in history. But the UConn dynasty is dead. Okay, it's dead. When Paige Beckers walks out that door, she ain't walking back through that door. Okay, Azzi Fudd has never been the player that everybody thought she would be, and I hate that because she was billed as the most generational player.
Yeah. And
look, you can't predict injuries, but both of those players have injury histories. And I ranked number 17 in the AP poll and number 19 in the coaches poll. I think the coaches probably have it right until they get some more players back healthy in the lineup. And so I did think we are seeing a change of the guard. I think Notre Dame, when Olivia Miles gets fully incorporated back into that team, I think they could make my second tier. I think Iowa is just below the second tier because I'm not sold on the supporting cast, but Caitlin Clark is the best player in the country. She probably will be the best player to come out in this draft class. And she will be paired with Aaliyah Boston, which means Indiana is probably going to eventually be able to build a super team around those two.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, when you look at, what the Aces built around, the foundation of the Aces in terms of homegrown talent was Asia Wilson and Kelsey Plum. And that is a very similar pairing to what the Fever are about to have. And that's scary. That should be scary for the rest of the league. And, Aaliyah is certainly not Asia right now, but I think Caitlin certainly has, the potential to be Kelsey Plum. I think Aaliyah has, the potential to be sort of in the same stratosphere as Asia, though not necessarily, I don't know that anyone will ever be Asia. But
they're different.
To have that level of sort of, just elite guard play, elite post play, two players who I think approach the game very similarly, are both very serious about basketball, like take it very seriously. I think it's a good fit for them. I think they're a good complement for each other. I think, having Caitlin would be nice to phase out some of those older guards on the Fever. No shade to anybody, but I think, it's a really, really, if I am Aaliyah Boston, I'm stoked right now by how that lottery went.
So I personally, Caitlin Clark, to me, her ceiling is way higher than Kelsey Plum.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She's taller. She can play the point and off the ball, and she can shoot from anywhere. And she's also a willing passer, which Kelsey Plum, she's the Will Rogers. Yeah, she's never, you could fake her a pass and she would shoot it. Even if she didn't have the ball, if you just faked her a pass, she would shoot it. She's never met a shot she didn't like. Although I did think she was better at that this year, probably because Chelsea Gray probably threatened to whip her ass if she didn't, But it is good for Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah is a different player than Asia. They are different, but what she did as a rookie has never been done before when you look at her numbers. And so I think her game is evolving. All right, so we spent all our time talking women's basketball. I didn't want to talk Gamecock football, and so I'm only going to ask you about the Rocket, which has departed Arkansas and headed for Columbia, South Carolina. How does that help Lenora Sellers be a better quarterback for South Carolina next year?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing it does is it means he's not going to have to run, 100 times a game. I think, a lot of, we saw Spencer scramble so much more this year than he had in the past. I think largely because the run game options were not there. So, they're running a lot of those sort of RPO type of plays. And, obviously with a guy like Lenoris, you want to do that. You want to have the option for him to use his legs because that is such a weapon for him. But also you have a sophomore quarterback who's playing against, Power 5 competition truly for the first time in his life. If Lenora Sellers is not going to be able to take hits the way that Spencer Rattler was able to take hits this year. That's where you start to get concerned about, getting kids hurt, having long-term, setbacks and things like that. And so I think as much as they can protect him next year and kind of, not constantly have the ball in his hands on the ground, I think that's a good thing. I think the more, having that veteran presence next to him is really helpful. That addition is a huge win for him. Like I think it cannot be overstated how important that addition is.
Yeah, getting some older players back that were injured last year on the offensive line, particularly Jalen Nichols, who missed the season, getting Vershawn Lee back, and, you threw 2 true freshmen in the fire. They will be better next year. I think it makes Lenora Sellers more of a threat with his legs because you're going to have to respect a 6'2". I think they'll get him to about 235. Because this is his contract year, right? Rocket Sanders wants to be a first-round draft pick. You get him back to 2022 form, and he's going to run through contact. He knows how to find a hole. And when you have to really key on him and then Lenoris pulls it like he did against Vanderbilt, a lot of safeties and corners are going to be bouncing off of those thighs because he is bigger and maybe faster than Rocket Sanders because he's almost 6'4" and over 240 pounds, and he runs a legitimate 4.41 40. and he's not bad at going through his progressions and throwing the ball, as we saw early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's the biggest thing that having Raga does is, again, not that Raga is necessarily going to be a better runner, but it gives them time to figure things out. You know, you have a guy in Raga where you go, okay, I know I can put the ball in his hands and he's probably going to get 3-4 yards. And, you know, especially with a young quarterback, with a young, you know, skill position core outside of the quarterback, you know, your receivers are going to be young, potentially, depending on how the portal goes. You know, you might have a young tight end or two rotating in, depending on how the portal goes. I think, to have a guy who can sort of be, you know, old reliable, I think they needed that really, really badly on offense.
No doubt. So, Emily, the holidays are coming up. Not many women's basketball games until the new year. They are going on the road, though, to Bowling Green as a favor to Fred Shamil and East Carolina. Only one game left. That's this weekend. And then, you know, South Carolina, they're 9-0. They're going to be 12-0 going into SEC play. And you really don't want to lose an SEC game because you want to win the conference, because there is that trailer park coach over in Louisiana that probably moved her trailer from Waco to Baton Rouge that is going to win a lot of games. And is the SEC down? And what's the outlook for South Carolina going into SEC play?
Yeah, I'm fully ready to be out on the SEC. I mean, I thought for a second, I was like, okay, Talia Sky, you know, Arkansas, maybe they look good, immediately lose to Pine Bluff. You know, Tennessee's losing to MTSU. I mean, God knows what's going on in that program. Almost Eastern too. That game was close down to like the last couple minutes of the fourth quarter. I mean, like Alabama, you know, had their one good, I can't remember who Alabama had like one good win and then immediately lost to Green Bay. Like I mean, there's just no consistency outside of that clear top two of South Carolina and LSU. And after that, it just gets so muddled. I mean, even Texas A&M, who I was super, super high on coming into the year, you know, had that really bad early loss to Purdue, where they just didn't play well. And you know, I think right now A&M is probably the third best team in the conference. But I mean, again, they've still got that weird loss to, you know, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is 8-1 or 9-1 now. I mean, like the Twilight Zone is here for the SEC. But I don't see there being too many ranked opponents on the schedule in conference play for South Carolina, which I think is particularly unfortunate when you look at, you know, right now UCLA and NC State are kind of the ones right behind them in the poll. UCLA is going to play a whole lot of ranked teams in the Pac-12, and so is NC State in the ACC. The way that things are looking right now, with Miami breaking in this week. You know, Wazoo's kind of been on the bubble. Washington's now on the bubble in the Pac-12, even though they've only got, I think, 4 or 5 in right now. So it's, you know, South Carolina, I think, is going to really have to like not lose games and not have, you know, a silly Mizzou loss somewhere. You know, if they lose to LSU, they lose to LSU. I think that wouldn't be shocking to anyone, you know, going to Baton Rouge. But they're really going to have to take care of business against the little guys, because they're not going to get opportunities to redeem those, because there's not that many elite teams in the conference this year compared to the rest of the Power Five.
No doubt. So great stuff as always, Emily. Tell us what your holiday plans and what was on your list to Santa this year.
I'm just headed home to Philly for a bit. My list to Santa, I don't even know what it was this year. I'm trying to get a second monitor for my computer. Got to get the home office setup advanced a little bit. So I think that was on there. I think my other big one was an air fryer, because I am a very lazy cook, and I've been informed that those are a good tool for that. But yeah, it should be, got a couple more things coming down the pipe the next few days. Got a big Dawn Staley feature dropping, I think next week, right around Christmas. So yeah, still busy in this end, even though it's, slowing down a little bit in the rest of the world.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, and safe travels. And again, thank you for all you do. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. And Happy New Year. We'll look forward to catching up with you in 2024.
Yes, you as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was my interview from earlier this morning with Emily Adams. So on Daniel Hill, okay. Look, his dad has been working against the Gamecocks the entire time. He's wanted him to go to Alabama, then Alabama wasn't going. They were going to go in a different direction. Now Jeff Leby has come in at Mississippi State. Hill took an official visit there over the weekend. His dad played at Mississippi State, and the kid has not been back to South Carolina since June. He never came for a game, even though he was supposed to. I think he probably ends up at Mississippi State. And quite frankly, South Carolina just was not willing to go down that road. I mean, I guess you never say never, but I would expect a third transfer portal running back. They will hold on to Matthew Fuller, barring something unforeseen there. And he's a stud. He's been a big riser as a senior in the rankings. And so that would give you DJ Braswell, who will be back, Rocket Sanders, who has 1 year, okay, Oscar Attaway III, who has 2 years. You get a portal back that will probably have 4 to play 3, and then you bring in Matthew Fuller. He's got 5 to play 4, and Braswell will be a sophomore as well. And you still got Juju McDowell. So I think the Gamecocks are in a good spot there. I kind of expect, there's always surprises on signing day, and you never know. But right now, I think the guy that is trending the most with South Carolina from the high school ranks that is uncommitted now is Jabron Gatling, the wide receiver from Milton High School that had been committed to Texas A&M for over the past year and a half. And folks, there's a lot to like about Jabron Gatling. I mean, at the time he committed, he probably could have gone just about anywhere in the SEC. And then the same thing happens to him that happens to a lot of guys that commit early. They drop a little bit in the rankings. Nobody pays them any attention because it's all about the uncommitted guys. I do think South Carolina will continue. Clint, I agree. I mean, he plays in a big-time high school program, and Gatling will be, if South Carolina adds him, along with Mazio Bennett, that'll definitely be Justin Stepp's best recruiting class, and we have to give him credit there. Don't really think anything to Staley wearing the gloves. Maybe just because it was the first day of Shrine Bowl practice and he's representing the South Carolina team. I also think it is big news. Jalewis Solomon on Twitter just a few minutes ago announcing that he has shut down his recruiting and he is definitely going to be a Gamecock. I think Michael Smith is there. I think the only one to worry a little bit about in South Carolina, had an in-home visit with him last night, is Braden Lee. His dad passed away last spring or last winter, and Maryland has really stayed on him. But it looks like right now, Shane Beamer and staff have done a great job holding this class together. And I'm looking forward to next Wednesday, to National Signing Day. We can talk about all these guys putting their names on the dotted line. And we'll have our Garnet and Black Town Hall a week from tonight, where I promise to have a couple of liquor drinks or a couple of adult beverages and celebrate this signing class, because I do think it's a good one. I do think there are more portal commitments to come. And let's see who when you make $6 million a year and you're the head coach, which basically means you're a Fortune 500 CEO, you don't need to be clapping back at a bunch of guys hiding behind usernames on a message board that are panicking and overreacting. So, Coach Beamer, we love you, and don't be so thin-skinned, okay? That's right. A lion does not concern himself with the opinion of sheep. Well said. And so Staley signed grant and aid papers, okay, which binds Tennessee to him, but not him to Tennessee. You can't sign the actual letter of intent until December 20th. So that's what he signed. He signed papers that are scholarship papers, but not a national letter of intent that binds him to the university. But the papers that he signed did bind Tennessee to him. So we'll see if there's any high school surprises besides DeBron Gatling. I think he's probably just going to wait until signing day and sign. I could be wrong on that, but we'll see. And stay tuned. More portal commitments to come. Special thanks to today's sponsor of the show, BP Skinner Clothiers. This beautiful Holderness and Bourne quarter zip, which I wore for the Kentucky game and have on today. I got a garnet one and got a polo as well from that line. BP Skinner Clothiers, located right in the heart of the Vista on Gervais Street, for all your custom clothing needs, custom wardrobe needs in menswear. That is the place to go. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, go Gamecocks, and God bless. And I agree with Clint. I like DeBron Gatling. And Matt, appreciate you. Should be another exciting weekend. And just remember, when Sunday rolls around, if there's not 5 or 6 commitments, just calm down. Wednesday's coming. Right, guys? All right, I'll be back on National Signing Day. Until then, go Gamecocks, and God bless us all. Goodbye.